YouTube, you have to have something like Restream to get to YouTube, I think.
As far as I know, they had a tutorial that didn't say that, but I'll have to go back and look again.
All right, we're
Live now, right?
We're on YouTube.
But
We're streaming. Hi,
I'll have to go
everybody.
back and
We'll
look
be on
again.
in about 90 seconds, so a minute and a half. Right on the hour. Let's
Live
go
now.
live on Facebook.
But
We're streaming. Hi,
I'll have to go
everybody.
back and
We'll
look
be on
again.
in about 90 seconds, so a minute and a half.
You know what it's doing, Yaron?
What?
It's
1 minute
showing
until
only one of
showtime.
us at a time. It's not doing the split screen on YouTube.
There we go. It's doing it now.
Oh, okay, good.
Second, and we'll get there. It's not. Yeah, it's just lagging. There we go.
Yep,
Got it?
there we are. Great.
It just
Thank you.
lags. Hi, everybody. We're starting in less than a minute, so we'll be right on soon. What happened to chat on? Oh, there it is. Okay, so I'm going to close YouTube. Make sure your YouTube is muted, Amy.
Oh, yes, I already did that.
Okay. And Facebook is muted. Facebook is always muted. All right, we've already got 40 people, 50 people. No, 40. No, I can't count. Jesus.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Sorry, Amy, to get you up so early. And sorry, all of you, particularly those on the West Coast, that you have to get up early. Although the Europeans among you should be thanking me because this is much more convenient for you. What is it now? It's 8 p.m. London time. That's where I'm going to be heading in my flight. My first flight takes off in about 4.5 hours. But yes, that's why we did it early. I'm off to the UK. So Amy, it's what, 8 o'clock in the morning? Sorry.
Yeah, I figured you did this to gain rhetorical advantage of some kind because I'm not really totally awake yet. So.
That's right. We're going to change the title. Yes.
Oh, yeah, we were having this discussion. So none of the above, you don't like it so much, right?
Well, I still think it's negative. It doesn't really convey what we do. And I'm not sure anything needs a title. So if I think about successful shows out there, you don't think about the title, you think about the person. So Sam Harris has a podcast. I don't remember the title of the podcast. It has a title, but I have no idea what it is. Who cares?
Waking up or something, right?
It's waking
Yes.
up. And radio shows are by the name of the hosts. I mean, what do you want to brand? You want to brand None of the Above or Amy Peikoff? I think you want to brand Amy. So anyway.
Okay. I mean, in my own show, I had I have this title, Don't Let It Go Unheard as well. So maybe I'm just.
Yeah, I've had all these titles to my shows, and now I'm going to come down and I'm going to collapse everything to your own book show because that's what I want to brand ultimately, I think.
Right. Right.
All right. We should get onto something that.
Let's do it. No, let's do it.
I don't think
So you're changing the title of this series and what you said, Yaron and Amy show. Is this, what you think? So I'm going to argue, I was up and I made our program notes and everything for last night. And the title was A Single Drop of Sewage, which is out of the metaphor in Jordan Peterson's book, where he talks about the fact that if you have a lie, it's like putting a single drop of sewage in this beautiful crystal magnum of champagne. Right.
Same as Iron had the metaphor of poison, right? You wouldn't take a little bit of poison, just a drop of poison. It's not much. It's the same kind of metaphor, and it's a great metaphor. The sewage one is good. So.
Yeah, no, it's excellent. But I'm going to try to sort of talk you into a different title, which I haven't even revealed. But by the way, people who are watching live, I haven't even told him.
I didn't choose the sewage title either. She's changed her own mind. It's not even my mind she has to change.
Right. Okay. So the first story to talk about actually is this tweet that I reacted to with Trump yesterday. And it, goes a little along with the none of the above idea in the sense that it invokes religion. And he wants to say something nice about Graham, who passed away this week. And so he talks about our national motto. And he says, our national motto is "In God We Trust." Now, you look at some history, and it's been that motto only since 1956.
I don't think it's a motto even then. It's in the where is it? Right. I don't, is it a motto? Is it a motto of America?
Yeah, it's a motto. And so, if you go on Wikipedia, it says, it's the official motto of the United States. It was adopted in 1956 as a replacement or alternative to the unofficial motto, which was, E pluribus unum. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
You're asking the wrong person.
Am I? Yes. I think unum is where I might be wrong. Anyway, that had been, out of many one, the motto before that. But I think with, again, having God in the Pledge of Allegiance, one nation under God, that was added recently as well. And conservatives like to cite it and say, well, it's there. Let's pretend it's always been there, in effect. I mean, this is typical. Any reaction to this from Trump by you?
Well, I mean, there's so many levels you can go with this. One, I doubt Trump believes in God, and I doubt Trump's believe in any specific God. I think the whole appeal to evangelicals is one big lie. It's a political lie that he has to do. So him being holier than thou, all these affairs, the general behavior is not exactly what most people would consider a model behavior by a God-fearing man. Or maybe it is exactly what you'd expect from a God-fearing man. I don't know. I'll leave that to you guys. But
that's what I grew up with, yeah.
But then of course, it's a complete negation of the founding principles of this country. The founding principle of this country is, as you note in your tweet, which is a very good tweet, individual rights. It's the fact that we have a right to pursue happiness. It's not the right to pursue God. It's not that we all believe in God or under God. The founding fathers didn't all believe in the same God. Many of them were deists. Some of them were more Christian. Some of them were less Christian. Some of them were probably atheists, out and out atheists. But none of them would have said, this is what makes America America. What makes America America is a unique perspective on individual rights and the government that was founded to protect those rights as its sole purpose. And that's America. And I love your "Make America America." Well, it could be American or America again. Make America American again. Yeah.
Did I say American? I did say American, right?
America should be "Make America America again." So.
Oh, well, I have this series that I do of this. So I'm tweeting to him all the time. And when I tag it on Instagram, that's the second tag is "Make America American again." The idea of Americanism and individualism. But so going back, when I did tweet this out, I found out that there's been a lot of discussion. People don't understand what "E pluribus unum" means. They think that it's some sort of a collectivist slogan versus the propriety of uniting people around a principle. Yep. And so I think the proper understanding of this is something that escapes somebody like Trump. And, Trump certainly doesn't want to say that we're united around a principle. Let's unite around a religion or a culture. Some people would say unite around a race, but I doubt he's a racist.
No, but Trump is nothing. I mean, he really is nothing. He's what he thinks will gain his votes, or what his advisors whisper to him that day. And I think religion is a big factor because, first of all, because Billy Graham died, and so religion's at top of mind of his people. Second, Billy Graham was the guy who helped. I mean, he's a real villain of American politics. I mean, talk ill of the dead, but he's a real villain of American politics because he was part of that massive movement in the 1970s and early 1980s to bring the evangelical movement head on into politics and to entrench it into the Republican Party. Right. And yes, he advised presidents, Democrat and Republican, but it was all with the goal of bringing the evangelicals into politics, entrenching religion in politics, making religion part of the political debate, left and right. And he succeeded. I mean, even the Democrats, even Obama had to talk about church and him going to church and God. Hillary Clinton, talk about a woman who you'd think the church would denounce completely, but even she had to pretend to be religious. All these people had to pretend to be religious, partially because what Billy Graham did. Now, yeah, he was a moderate, but that's what made him so effective at bringing religion into politics from every perspective. No, actually, somebody says Jerry Falwell was the real enemy because he was the radical. It was the more extremist. No, it's the moderate who's the real enemy, because it's the moderate who snuck religion in under everybody without anybody seeing. And now religion is entrenched in American politics in a way that I don't know if it would have been if not for Graham. So it's not an issue of moderate or what's another word for extreme? Or extreme.
Radical or
like radical. Radical's too good of a word.
Yeah, exactly. Fundamentalist.
Yeah, it's not who's more fundamentalist. It's not who's more fundamentalist. Yeah, Billy Graham was nice to everybody. He was polite. He again, advised about Democrats and Republicans. That's the damage. The damage is that it's everywhere, and fanatic is another good word. It's so it's at the top of mind. Religion's top of mind. But remember who voted for Trump. To a large extent, he got the evangelical vote. And not only did he get the evangelical vote, he got evangelicals to come and vote. They didn't vote for Romney.
Yes.
But they came to vote for Trump. So he has to play religion to his base. This is his base. So I don't think he thinks, I don't know that he's ever heard of pluribus unum or unum. I don't know. I don't think he's ever, right? I don't think he's knowledgeable about American history, about what used to be the American motto. I don't think he thinks in those terms. I think he says what he thinks is going to do him political good. That's what motivates him.
Yeah, and that's it. It's very, very pragmatist. And what I've always talked about with him is he's classic pragmatist in the sense of James saying, what is the good? The good is that which satisfies demand. And if you read Trump's inaugural address, it's all about satisfying the demands of the people who haven't been heard and all of this kind of stuff.
All politicians are pragmatists, but he is the ultimate pragmatist. He is a pragmatist and an anti-ideological, and he's particularly bad.
Yeah. So I want to go ahead and then tie this in, and I'm bringing in a news story. It was an opinion piece that my friend Benjamin posted, and it's got some good stuff. Let me recapitulate it for you, though. So this piece says, hey, on the one hand, there is something to do with Russia that we should be somewhat concerned with, and that is whether or not there was influence around the Trump campaign. And of course, they're, researching this. And are they ever going to come up with a collusion case? We don't know. But this guy talks about the exact sort of things that I'm concerned about. Why are you eager to meet with Russians who have this, data, whatever? But then he says there's another problem about Russia that people are overly concerned with, and it's the effect of these trolls on social media, the Russians with these fake accounts and spreading all of this stuff. And the message of this author, and actually let me give the guy some credit here really quick, if I can, that would be nice. Ross Douthat, I guess is how you would pronounce his name, a contributor over at New York Times. He says that these ads that the trolls sponsored weren't the real problem at all, that they had very little effect. And what this has done, this kind of fascination and obsession with what the effect of these Russian trolls has done, it's taken away from what the real issue is. So I'll just read a little bit in terms of, the effect of these trolls on the election. He says the pro-Trump ads the trolls sponsored during the campaign were just clumsy variations on ubiquitous right-wing themes. Hillary is Satan, her crimes and lies prove just how evil she is, etc. The protests and counter-protest that they ginned up after the election were just marginal imitations of the all-American crowds that showed up for Trump, etc. And then he says the people, I'm skipping down, he says the people who believe them by and large were probably not the nearly 78,000 Midwestern swing voters, etc. So he's saying it didn't have that much of an effect. And then you skip down in the piece, he says the bottom line is that the liberal mandarins in the West, not just in America, face a hard choice when it comes to the populism that gave us Trump, Brexit, and the right-wing parties and governments in Central and Eastern Europe. You know, they're going to have an election in Italy soon too. He says, should this reemergent nationalism be conciliated and co-opted, its economic grievances answered, and some compromises made to address its cultural and moral claims, or is it sufficiently noxious and racist and destructive that it can be only crushed through gradual demographic weight or ruthless polarized mobilization? Okay, so he says that's the question that is facing us. On the one hand, do you
that's the
say
question facing the left? That's how he's positioned it, right?
Yeah. It's the question facing the left, right? That, you know, on the one hand, do you answer some of the grievances, make compromises to address these other claims, or do you say this is all bad, really bad and toxic for freedom in our country or whatever, and we need to crush it in effect? And he says this fixation on the Russian troll problem in particular is making this idea that we're going to crush them. You're making that choice without admitting you're making it. And I'm quoting from him. He says, to pretend that in trying to crush your fellow countrymen, you're really fighting traitors and subversives and foreign adversaries. You're further otherizing this domestic outgroup by associating them with Russia. So he's saying the fixation on this is phony because it didn't have much of an effect, and it's distracting from the real problem. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's all messed up. So I think that it's none of the above, right? So I don't think that it's wrong to fixate on Russia trying to manipulate our elections. If this is coming from the Russian government, I think it's absolutely right to think about whether it changed the election or not. And I suspect it didn't. That it's important for the American people to know that the Russian government, Quad government, is trying to impact the U.S. election and trying to do weird things and trying to spread propaganda, and we should be aware of that. I think it's part of the role of government to let us know when another government, not just private entities, but another government is making an attempt to subvert what is going in America. I also think that he assumes that the left conceptualizes things in these terms. I mean, what the left, I think, if the left was smart, what they would do was what I think Bernie Sanders will ultimately do, and Elizabeth Warren will try to do. What they'll do is they'll separate two issues out. They'll take the so-called disaffected American voters, and they'll say, look, the nationalism, the elements of xenophobia, these cultural issues, forget those. Those are dead. They're not coming back. We're not going to reverse gay marriage. We're not going to reverse any of this stuff. So forget about it. But they have economic grievances. And they have economic grievances that they will argue, the left, Trump is not addressed, and we can address them. We can help these people. We can truly bring manufacturing jobs back to America. We can do a basic income or whatever it is, universal basic income. And they'll separate the two and they'll go after that. So I think it's not that here's a grieving group that has legitimate grievances. I don't believe that for a second. The legitimate grievances they have, they don't know them. The fundamental characteristic of Trump voters, and I'm not including everybody who voted for Trump, just so you know, I mean, the block of lower middle class, working class, whatever you want to call it, voters, white supposedly, who voted for Trump. The primary problem with that group is a feeling of alienation. And that alienation is partially a result of the failure of the mixed economy and the failure of intellectuals to explain what's going on and to offer an alternative, and a cultural alienation. But the cultural alienation, they're wrong. And they better change their views on the cultural issues. They're wrong about them. They're wrong about their suspicion about immigrants. They're wrong about their view of gay marriage. They're wrong about their views with regard to a lot of these cultural issues. Now, some of the cultural issues, the left is nuts about them and they're crazy. But that doesn't make the people who voted for Trump right. They're both wrong. None of the above, right? They're both wrong on transgender issue and some of the really fringe issues. Both sides are wrong. But the real question is, why is this group alienated? And why are they so angry? And I think that has more to do with mixed economy, more to do with promises made to them, more to do with kind of what Ayn Rand talked about back in the 60s and 70s about the psychological damage done to people because of mixed economy, and they're losing their grip on being able to control their own lives. And nobody is explaining it to them. The explanation is always, what we need is more mixed economy. What you need are more checks from the government. What we need is to help you more. When the actual what they need is a free market. And this alienation, because people are saying, yeah, the problem with alienation is the Marxist. No, the problem of alienation is left and right. Again, it's from both sides. One side saying the solution is religion and statism, and the other side saying the solution is socialism and statism, and both are wrong. And until you offer a rational alternative to these people, a cultural, political, philosophical alternative to them, a moral alternative to them, then it's hopeless. They'll swing left, they'll swing right. Who knows where they'll go?
Yeah, and this idea of abandoning e pluribus unum, and in particular, if you think you're going to bring it back, you're going to bring it back in some sort of a collectivist way, as opposed to understanding, uniting everybody around the principle of individual rights, then you're lost. There's no real alternative there. But I don't think that this columnist is assuming that the left thinks of it in this way. What he's saying, as I understand him, is that they really don't think of it in this way, and that in not thinking about it in this way and in choosing to fixate on the troll problem, which they're not understanding in the correct way. I agree with you that it is important to know if the Russians are trying to do this, even if so far they haven't been effective, because they're just weakly, mimicking what's already out there on the right.
I disagree. Look, even if there were, let's say it wasn't Russians, let's say it was Americans, and there were whole groups of people set up in server farms feeding the American fake news. I mean, that's important. That's real news. If I were a journalist, I'd spend most of my time investigating that. That's like one of the most important news stories of the day. So I think the leftist media is focusing on this as they should. They should focus on this. This is real news. I think the right guy who wrote it, just from what you read, is much too sympathetic to the Trump administration. And not to the Trump administration, to Trump voters. As
far as I know, he's not, though, right? Because he's saying yes, this, the movement of Trump voters that are wrong about what it is that their grievance actually is, that they need to be addressed. But he's saying that the way to address them is not necessarily to crush them, or you need to make a conscious decision about whether what we need to do is. And so I think he would be receptive to what you just said, that Clinton or not Clinton, is Clinton coming back? Please no. But Sanders or Warren, what they're going to do in the next election, right? That they are going to give their solution to the economic grievances, and that they're going to say, sorry, with these other grievances, the ship has sailed.
Well, what they want is economic collectivism. What they want is class warfare, class collectivism, and what Trump wants is a different form of collectivism, a nationalistic form of collectivism. They're all collectivists. They all agree on the collectivism, but so I don't know. I mean, I'm sympathetic to focusing on the trolling issue, because I think it's an important issue. I'm sympathetic to trying to figure out if there was collusion, because I think it's important, although there probably wasn't collusion. My conclusion is that the Trump guys were just amateurs. But I will say this, I'm reading a lot about Paul Manafort. Wow. I mean, that he is a piece of work.
Oh yeah.
He is probably 1,000 times more corrupt than what is being suggested in mainstream media. The Atlantic magazine has done a whole series of articles on Paul Manafort, and this guy is a crony, corrupt, and he spent decades with in politics in Ukraine. Talk about corruption. So is there a connection between Paul Manafort and the Kremlin? I'd be surprised if there wasn't, given that Paul Manafort worked for Kremlin cronies in Ukraine, helped them get elected and facilitated their, he was there when the president of Ukraine had to escape because of the Orange Revolution. He was advising the president, who was a Putin, crony. So if you look at it, there are a lot of these intersecting, Flynn is an advisor and very friendly towards the Russians and the Russian military. There are all these intersecting weird things. Now, is Trump kind of guiding a collusion? I don't think so. But there's a lot of swamp. I mean, I think his group of advisors, if you take his group of advisors, Paul Manafort in particular, and he put it up against any of Clinton's advisors, they're just as swampy, just as corrupt, just as evil, just as bad. And if this investigation brings that out, if we discover the truth about Paul Manafort and how grotesque he really is, then it will have been a good thing. But you want to take this conversation in a different direction, and I keep.
No. I mean, I want to take it wherever the kind of truth leads us. The direction that I was going to go in terms of changing the title was I was going to say, hey, title of today's show, maybe E Pluribus Unum, in terms of understanding what that really means, uniting a country around a principle. And then the question is, to go back to, focusing on the trolls, the Russian trolls and everything. Focus on it, but focus on it because the thing that's more important is, what is it about our country that it makes people even receptive to this as well? I mean, that's really one of the main underlying problems, is that we don't understand anymore what this country is about. And so why do you have people on the right uniting around a cultural, religious collectivism, and then on the left around just an economic collectivism? And nobody has the idea of uniting around a principle that gives everybody freedom to, design their lives the way that they choose. So here's a question. Could we even bring E Pluribus Unum back? Would you want to do that? Or is it too misleading? Is it pushing towards a collectivist understanding too much in the way?
People that wouldn't get it. And it's way, and it, it's in Latin. Nobody knows Latin. And it's too, it's too susceptible to be misinterpreted as it's like in the Constitution, the preamble to Constitution, what was it? Something about the common welfare. Right? Would I be for including that today, given the understanding of welfare? No, it's been a disaster for everything.
Sure.
So no, I don't think bringing it back would at all be a good thing. But let me say something else about the Russian troll thing, which I think we talked about a little bit last time, but I think is important. There is a concerted effort by the Russians to undermine the United States and to poke us. And this has to do with the attack on the Americans in Syria. And I think last time I said all orchestrated by the same guy, Putin's chef. And when you read about Putin's chef and all the involvement he has, there is a concerted effort by a foreign government to play games with us, to poke us, to potentially kill Americans. If that attack would have gone differently and American Special Forces guys would have been killed, what then? Do we declare war on Russia? And to me,
that's escalating, by the way. I saw some news that they've brought in these planes that are super high tech and deadly and stuff. They've brought them in within the last 10 hours.
In the last few days, the best plane the Russians can build. I'm not impressed.
Okay.
I'll take an American fighter jet over a Russian fighter jet any day. I don't care how sophisticated they claim it is. I can tell you stories about sophisticated Soviet weapons. They're pretty funny. So here was an attack that clearly Putin had something to do with. An attack on a U.S. and there's a lot of stories coming out today. There's one in the Wall Street Journal, in the Washington Post about this and about showing that this was directly connected to Putin, and that this was not accidental. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to get Americans out of Syria. Now, I want America out of Syria too, but basically he's doing it by trying to kill Americans. So he uses mercenaries, not official. So there is a whole connection here. There are all these things that are connected. Who knows what else Russia's doing in different places around the world. to undercut it, to undercut what America is doing. And nobody seems to care. So we view it as the attack on the base, the trolling. Maybe there's a connection between Trump and Putin, but nobody is looking at this, asking the foreign policy question as an objectivist would, or a decent president would. What is going on with Russia? Is Russia a threat to the United States? How do we deal with this threat? What are the strategies that we're going to put together in the weeks and months to come? And of course, the worst thing you can do is to play into its hands, which is what Mathis did, saying, "Oh no, yeah, there was some kind of Russian involvement. We don't kind of know, it's probably not the Russian government."
Perplexed, I think he said he was, or something, right?
Perplexed. This is our foreign policy leaders are perplexed.
Yes.
There's a foreign government trying to impact American decision making, trying to manipulate what we do and what we don't do in our foreign policy leadership. The best among them, Mathis, is perplexed, right? So we have, and I've said this forever, since World War II, the United States had no comprehensive, systematic view of the world. It's had no foreign policy to speak of, and include the Reagan administration under this. No systematic foreign policy, and no view of what are threats, and no communication to the American people about what those threats are.
Right.
So that's what horrifies me about this whole thing. Instead of focusing on all these little trivialities, although it's amazing to me that name after name after name after name of Trump advisors. We're talking about Paul Manafort, who ran his campaign for months and months, ran his campaign. Mm-hmm. And all these other Gates and all these other people now Manafort hasn't, but all these other people are pleading guilty to crimes. Now, partially it's because the laws are so corrupt and bad that you pretty much, I'm sure they could find something on me, and I'm sure they could find something on anybody. But I think these people are really corrupt. And if this is how we land up draining the swamp, by discovering that pretty much all these people advising both Republicans and Democrats are all swampy, corrupt people, then maybe that's good. So that's important. But the real question is a foreign policy question about Russia and its intentions and what it's doing. And then what is America's role in Syria, and how should we be there? Somebody's asking, why is America in Syria? Supposedly America's in Syria right now to kill off the last remnants of ISIS, and that they will supposedly leave when they've done that. ISIS is an enemy of the United States, and they're killing them. Why are they there? Why do we have troops in 140 different countries? Because we have no foreign policy, and we drop troops everywhere in order to appease people, in order to buy people's love, in order to buy dictators' friendship, and in order to satisfy our desire to be involved in any aspect of the world. And Trump, who in the campaign kind of said some good things in foreign policy, basically his foreign policy is no different than Obama's, which is not that different than Bush's, which is not that different than anybody previous to that. So his foreign policy he has none. It's a complete.
Well, and you talked on your show this week about we are going to go ahead and sell nuclear technology to the Saudis and stuff. I mean, we have nothing. So here's an interesting thought about this. So, you'll say it's interesting or not. I'm going to let you do that. It's 8 a.m. here. So, I would say, so we've got all this corruption, right? And again, I was going to call today's show a single drop of sewage. And I'm starting to get this sense that the reason we have this swamp is because of the failure to understand anymore what a proper government is about. That, you go back to Bastiat, his little monograph, when he talks about the fact that if you give government all of this power over the lives of individuals, you're always going to have these lobbyists and people coming in trying to vie to be the one to control that power over everybody else. And so then you have this swamp and all these cronies. But, in terms of the Trump administration, that it wound up having all of these people who had ties to Russia and, are also, the corruptness is I think because we've lost sight of what government is even for. And so you have these people who are eager for power. But in terms of the Russian connection, was it just because people sensed, that Trump had this sort of sympathy towards Putin, a little bit of an admiration about aspects of Putin. And so it's like, hey, let's pack this campaign with people who know stuff about Russia because he wants to figure out what to do about Russia. And so kind of bumbling, but you have these people who, they were connected to Russia. Of course, they're connected to Russia in some corrupt way because there's all this corruption out there because of the mixed economy and all the power of government. So maybe it wasn't a coordinated effort to like, hey, let's pack this campaign with people who are going to get the Russians to help us win, so much as let's pack this campaign with people who know stuff about Russia and who can help, Trump have good relations with Putin or something.
Maybe that's part of it, but I think the fundamental is, look, he brought in Paul Manafort because Paul Manafort is the ultimate swamp creature and knew Washington, D.C., and knew how to function within Washington, D.C. And he had a lot of people who owed him stuff because he's been a lobbyist. He came in, unfortunately, with the Reagan administration, and he was there for 30 years. Manafort knows the inside and out of Washington, D.C. And when Trump announced, Manafort was still in Ukraine. Manafort had just left Ukraine because he was kicked out because his candidate kind of was thrown out by revolution, and he was looking for a job. But also, Trump was an outsider, and he was looking for people who weren't already committed to a candidate. Right? There were 13 Republican candidates, so Manafort was a good choice because he understood that. But there's another important issue here. And the listeners are not going to like this, so I apologize, but this is what I think about Trump, and this is what I think about his campaign. Trump is deep down an authoritarian. He doesn't give a damn about the separation of powers in America, about anything. He wants everything he says to be done. Now he can't because we have a good system that prevents him from becoming an authoritarian. But he's got the mentality of an authoritarian. So is it shocking that he would surround himself with people who have strong links to an authoritarian called Vladimir Putin, one of the most ugly dictators in the world, right? Is it surprising that would bring in as his chief campaign advisor a guy who had just worked for a corrupt Ukrainian politician? The mentality of an authoritarian is going to surround himself with people who understand how authoritarians function. And if you want to learn from the best authoritarian out there in the world today, who's been incredibly successful, his people love him, he has attained power, and he's a loved authoritarian, which is pretty rare. It's Putin. Putin is loved by the Russian people, even though he's the thug. He's a really, really bad guy, and he's a real authoritarian. So he surrounded himself with people who reflected back what he wanted, which is Trump the authoritarian. Now, again, I don't think he went into the presidency to become a dictator or he's a fascist. He's not intellectual enough to be either one of those. But he's got the mentality of an authoritarian. And these people, the Russian connection, connected him to that in that sense.
You know where the authoritarian mentality reveals itself for me in Trump, and I do my series of tweets and I tweet to him all the time. He's got the whole thing about everybody should stand for the national anthem. And so many, he even tweeted about this during CPAC as well, that, look, everybody is standing for the national anthem. And I know that there's a debate about this, right? Because to us, the flag and the national anthem actually stand for this country founded on principle and everything else. But that's not the way that he or many of his supporters are taking it. And so, to me, when he was going to the NFL and saying, you need to fire and get rid of all these people and stuff because they're not standing properly for the national anthem, he's completely bypassing the principle on which this country is founded of individualism and people thinking for themselves and directing their own lives.
Wrong, but they're thinking for themselves, and they have a point of view, and their point of view might be wrong. You might disagree with it, but they have every right to protest, and they have every right to manifest that. Of course, the owners have every right to fire them if they want. It's
Right.
they're employees, and you should be able to fire them. But at the end of the day, think about what these black athletes are saying. Now, I'm not saying they're right, but think about what they're saying. They're saying they believe that there's systemic racism in America. They believe that systemic racism in America goes against the founding principles of America, and that they are protesting not the inconsistency of America's behavior with those founding principles, and they're taking a knee. Now, you can disagree with the idea that there is systemic racism in America. I think they overplay it. I think there's some truth to it as well. But so taking a knee is their protest against that. You can disagree with that. That's fine. But the idea that we should all be one, we are a nation, and the flag is some kind of almost mystical symbolism to some kind of American nationhood, rather than symbolizing the founding principles, then yeah, I mean, I wish I could take a knee every time the anthem is played and every time the flag is raised, because our government is violating the principles of the national anthem and the flag every single day. Think about these soldiers in Syria who have no mission, who are there for what? And imagine if the Russians had been successful and a bunch of them had died.
Yeah.
I mean, what a travesty of our foreign policy. And I think one way to protest that fact would be to take a knee, and it would be legitimate. And for, oh no, you're anti-American. No, taking a knee in that context would be pro-American. It's them. It's the government of America today. Unfortunately, it's a majority of Americans today who are anti-America. And now everybody's going to call me an America hater, or I've often been called, somebody who hates Americans, an immigrant who hates Americans. But I don't. I love Americans, and I love Americans in particular what they could and should be, which is the spirit and the sense of life of the founding. And I fear that they're losing both of those.
I definitely agree. And to me, sure, you say, okay, NFL, private organization, maybe go ahead if they wanted to and fire these guys. What I objected to was a president repeatedly tweeting about what the policy of this organization should be. That is distinctly anti-American for him to, go out there and use the bully tweet or something, right? Shouldn't be running
companies. You shouldn't tell them where to hire employees in Mexico or here, and you shouldn't be telling the NFL how to run its business.
Media companies, right?
I called him central planner in chief. Media companies in particular. Right?
Yeah, and he's done a number of tweets on that, telling the media companies who they should fire and everything else. So now this show has gone in a completely kind of different direction than I ever anticipated, which is good and fine. This is the nature of the discussion of these shows.
If we keep attacking Trump and the right, we're going to lose listeners. We better attack the left. Find something to attack the left, because that's how we gain viewers. I can see on Facebook the numbers plummeting the more we go after Trump.
No, exactly. So one thing that I'm going to go to, and it's sort of more neutral actually, goes along with this, thing that I observed this week when I dove back into the news myself, and I just witnessed how much dishonesty was behind
that point that you made earlier about the mixed economy driving that. Because I think, again, this is a point Ayn Rand makes in so many of her essays about the what happens when you have a mixed economy, and the fact that it becomes pull peddling, and she calls them pull peddlers, the swamp pull peddlers, and Manafort was a pull peddler excellence. I mean, he was really at the top. And to me, it's exactly that. Is once government is involved in our lives, once we have a central planner in chief, right, and any variation of that, well, I want to have control over my life. The way for me to gain control over my life is to go to Washington, D.C., because they're intervening in my life. And now how do I get their attention? I take them golfing, or I buy them a nice gift, or I take them on a trip overseas, or, and it's call it influencing, but it's bribing in some way or another. And I hire a bunch of lawyers, and that's how you get the mixed economy necessitates a swamp. The mixed economy necessitates corruption, and you're seeing it. It's in everything, in every aspect.
Yeah, and I believe that ultimately, if they are not going to succeed in proving any kind of collusion case, it's only because Trump hadn't been in power long enough. Because what I have seen so far is that they seemed at least willing to collude. Maybe there's not ever going to be any collusion showed. The actual thing that I wanted to go to next in terms of dishonesty had, well, I mean, we could say, does it have something to do with politics or not? That's a different question. But all of the doping among the Russian athletes in
Yep.
in the Olympics right now.
Ice skaters made it. I don't know if you saw that. Did you see the women's ice skating?
Is this the one where said, I am not a doper, and then she turned out to be the?
No, I was talking about, no, I was just talking about the ice skating because it was really amazing. These two Russian women are so good that the one beat the other by 1 point. And,
oh, wow.
And it was so exciting. And it was an 18-year-old versus a 15-year-old. And it was thrilling. So the Russians can ice skate, and luckily they weren't banned from the Olympics on ice skating. So we got a great show. I love the Olympics. So sorry.
No.
Where you were going. Go ahead. But yes.
No. That's fine. And actually, I remember reading about the ice skaters because I guess the ice skaters are some of the few that aren't doping. Is that right?
Yes, that's the argument. We assume. I mean, they look like women. So usually when you dope, the women start looking like men and stuff. So,
yeah, well, there had been the curlers have been shown to dope, I guess. There's been some doping, and the guy said, oh, I think I was drugged, or, somebody slipped something into my drink. So they're still figuring that out. But the funniest one is someone from the bobsled team, the bobsled pilot. She actually wore a shirt, I don't do doping, and then failed the doping test. What is it with athletes, because the premise when you show up to a competition is that you are a valid competitor, that you are complying with the rules of that particular form. We could argue about should they be allowed to dope or should they not. But if you show up, you're saying, I'm here, I'm a valid competitor, I'm complying with the rules, and they're not.
Cyclist, what was his name? What was the famous cyclist, American cyclist?
Lance Armstrong.
I mean, that was unbelievable. Not only was he doping and gaming the system for years and years and years and winning everything, he was accused of being doping by everybody. He denied it. He went on huge public tirades denying it. He made a huge deal out of this is untrue. This is not right. And then as the evidence kept accumulating, finally, after years and years and years of denial, but not just denial. I mean, he was livid. He was so passionate in his denial. Then he comes out and say it's all true. And now we have explanations exactly how he did it. We have descriptions of the whole thing. Other people have come out and said, yes, we knew the whole time. I mean, what kind of delusional mind? I mean, I did the show on honesty, right?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of delusional mind holds that he can lie to the whole world, where there are people who've witnessed his lie that know he's lying, and then he will somehow be able to get away with it? And what does it do, of course, to his self-esteem and to his relationships with people and to just his life, to be constantly lying in the way that Lance Armstrong lied? I mean, it's just devastating. So these athletes are doing it. They do it constantly. We live in a world.
But I mean, do you think all of them do it, or it's more prevalent among the Russians for a reason? The Russians just aren't as good at doing it and getting away with it. Maybe Americans are.
In Russia, it's systematic. That's what the claim is. The claim is that in Russia, it's Putin doing it, right? Putin is basically saying, dope them so they win more medals and figure out a way to hide this from the Olympic Committee. So there's no question that in Russia, it was done systematically, that it was done with the knowledge of their own Olympic Committee. But I think it's generally in the culture. It's particularly in Russia and Ukraine and Eastern Europe and Latin America. It's in pragmatic cultures.
Okay.
And this is what it's cultures that are mystical, and pragmatic. Okay, something happened.
Like a flick of power or something. I don't know, huh?
Power went out. The question is, did the generator in my building go on? And that's why we still have electricity.
I'm still hearing you.
Well,
Hope.
I've got everything on battery packs, right? So for like a couple of minutes, everything will run. No, but the lights are still on. So this is Puerto Rico where we get power outages regularly. So, but I think it's a generator of the condo goes on like that as soon as there's a power outage. I think that's what happened. Anyway, I hope my flight doesn't get delayed as a consequence.
Oh gosh, yes.
Where were we? Athletes, doping.
Oh, so the pragmatic cultures as breeding dishonesty.
But it's more than pragmatism. It's the mystical cultures. It's religious cultures. Cultures that have altruism as dogma, altruism through religion. Cultures in which those who rebel have to be corrupt because there's no alternative. So what you're taught is either you're Mother Teresa, nobody wants to be Mother Teresa, or you're a lying, cheating scumbag, right? So you're going to be a lying, cheating scumbag, and there's no mechanism to achieve happiness and wealth and success other than lying and cheating. Now, because we know those things are bad for you, right? We know they're against the doctrine. In America, what's happened for a long time, this sustained us, I think, is the fact that Christianity got this kind of blend of, what do you call it? Success Christianity or pro-wealth Christianity. It's okay to be selfish as long as you donate at the end, right? As long as you give your money away when you die, it's okay to make money and it's okay to be happy and it's okay to be successful. Jesus really wanted you to succeed in life.
Right. There was a TV preacher, I think his name was Freddie Price, who was popular. My parents used to watch him and stuff, and he was one who tried to have that blend, that it's good to be successful here on earth and he ended up, having some inspiring sermons and things like that along those lines. But yeah, trying to blend those two things. You think not so much anymore?
I think in America it's going away, but in the world it never was there, right?
Right.
So in the world, it's never been the case that Christianity had the success element to it. It was always about failure and suffering and misery. So Europeans have rejected that Christianity, but what have they replaced it with? A form of pragmatism. Right. Those people in Russia that rejected that mystical kind of morality have rejected it in favor of what? In favor of out and out corruption and out and out being the lying, cheating SOB that they've always been taught is the only alternative. So some of the smartest people are Russian mafia. Some of the smartest people are oligarchs who run around with guns and to control stuff like Putin, or some of the smartest people go into politics.
Right.
But the more an economy becomes a mixed economy, and the more an economy takes altruism or a culture takes altruism seriously, the more corruption, lying, stealing, cheating there will be. And this is an opportunity, in a sense, for Ayn Rand to come in and say, no, there's an alternative. You can have the happiness supposedly you seek, but corruption is not the way to do it. Lying, you don't achieve success through lying. Lying is a remedy for failure. And so I think you'll see more corruption. By the way, in politics, you're seeing it everywhere. I know one of the stories you sent me was about Bibi Netanyahu. Netanyahu might be losing his job because of corruption. I have no question in my mind he's corrupt.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you, because I wanted to know that you would know more than I do.
I don't like Bibi, but Israeli politics is corrupt. I mean, I think they're all corrupt. I mean, Al Gore. How does Al Gore, who's never done anything in his life except be in the Senate, and his father was a senator, how did that family get the wealth that they have? You remember there was a guy named Willie Brown who was the Speaker of the House of California years ago. Was the Speaker of the House of Representatives, grew up in poverty, and after that he became the mayor of San Francisco. Willie Brown always was in public in $2,000 suits.
Wow.
He lives in a mansion in San Francisco. He's got tons of money. How did they get that? Now you could say speaker fees, like Hillary Clinton got $250,000.
Sure.
But why do you get so much money for speaker fees? Because they're buying influence. They're using access to you. All these, I mean, I don't want to say all. Most of these politicians are corrupt. There's massive corruption in America. It's maybe not direct bribing of suitcases of cash, although I believe that happens as well. Once in a while, they'll catch a congressman with his refrigerator stuffed with cash. There is, because we live in a mixed economy of poll peddlers, and we live in a moral culture that has embraced pragmatism as the only possible alternative to Christian ethics of altruism. You know, this is what you get. And then, unfortunately, the solution is a strong embrace of altruism. That is the rise of the altruists, right? And so the rise of Christianity, the rise of religion. That's why I think that's the long-term the enemy. But you know, this is how you. And again, none of what I'm saying is original to me. This is or to us. This is Ayn Rand, vintage Ayn Rand, 60s and 70s. She was talking about this. She was talking about how in a moral void, corruption would fill the gap because people don't actually want to be altruistic. Nobody wants to be Mother Teresa.
No, and let me bring it maybe to a deeper level of just pure ethics and just talk about the effect of politics on the ability to lead an ethical life. Because, you know, Rand always talked about the fact that the practice of one virtue affects the practice of everything else. And so what a mixed economy ends up doing to all of us is it ends up making it impossible for us to be fully just, right? Yeah. It just kills our sense of justice, the idea of rewarding the good, the truly good in the world and punishing the bad. We are prohibited from doing that. And we have no frame of reference for rewarding the good anymore and you know, punishing the bad. And it's not surprising then, you know, given that option is taken away from us, we can't practice a virtue of justice, that it's going to end up bleeding into everything else, you know, that we're going to end up accepting dishonesty and corruption and everything. Let's go back to the whole issue of the Russian corruption. You know, is there Russian involvement? Is there collusion in the Trump campaign? So when I posted, there's this latest article, you know, Rick Gates is pleading guilty. And the article itself, you know, New York Times is making big hay out of it. Maybe they should, along the lines of the discussion that you have. But if you look at the article in its own terms, right now, they really don't know what the effect of this is or what Gates can really show in terms of the underlying question, you know, was there collusion? And so the people who say that all of this is nothing burger, you look at this article and you say, yeah, that's kind of nothing burger. And in fact, a lot of the language in it was, to me, you know, just making these arbitrary assertions. And it's just kind of funny. So I'll just give you a sample bit of language. It says, in addition to offering some visibility into the Trump campaign, Mr. Gates might be able to provide prosecutors with glimpses into what came after the president's election victory. You know, so it's like all this arbitrary possibility language is the way we would put it, but it's providing absolutely no basis for speculation about what this guy could do. They don't know yet, you know, they could just say. So I put this out there, and then people say, oh, well, the thing that I'm much more worried about is the real cronyism and corruption that was in the Clintons or something. So when I tell somebody, hey, I'm worried about the fact that the people who were working for the president, surrounding the president, that these people were themselves, I mean, at least we know that they were very corrupt individuals from all this. You know, there's all the deals and the bribes and the, you know, some of it you can say, okay, they're trying to get around taxes. And I don't, you know, I'm not upset with people who want to get around taxes. Taxes are unjust, but that just seems, you know, to get around that injustice, then they've got all these bribes and corruption and the connection with the Russians. There's some corruption here. When I say I'm worried about this, I'm willing to admit there's not too much here yet, but nonetheless, it's worthy of concern. And it's no answer to me for you to say, oh, well, I'm much more worried about this other pot of corruption over here.
Other people say, they say, well, what about the investigation of Hillary? Yeah, we should. I mean, there's a lot of corruption there. There's no question that foundation, you know, there was corruption. They were getting money from Saudi Arabia. They were getting money from Russians. They were getting money from all kinds of things. So the fact that there's corruption here doesn't mitigate the need to investigate other corruption. But the bottom line, I think, is there's no end to it. I think this is true. I mean, the one phrase that Donald Trump came up with, which I think is useful, is to actually think of Washington, D.C. as a swamp. It really is a swamp. It's ugliness all over the place. People are indeed filled with mud and muck and stuff. And it is massive amounts of real corruption in Washington. And until we're willing to address the cause, until we're willing to address the mixed economy and the pragmatic ethics, nothing will change. So when a Republican is in office, maybe we'll go after Democratic corruption, or maybe not, maybe the other way around. Or when the Democrats in office, we'll go to Republican corruption. But at the end of the day, the corruption is going to stay there because Paul Manafort is just going to be replaced by another guy because the lobbying culture, all of that has not changed. And Trump was saying he was going to drain the swamp, has made the swamp deeper and murkier and is infested the swamp with more swamp animals than ever. So the solution is to drain the swamp, but to drain the swamp, you need to have ideas. You need to have a philosophy. You need to know what you're going to replace the swamp with. And until we have that, forget it. And all those people who get excited about Donald Trump and who get excited about Republicans winning or whatever, I mean, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. Nothing is going to change. Nothing fundamentally is going to change. The economy might get a little bit better for a little bit while, or you might pay a little bit less taxes for a while until they raise taxes again. But in the big picture, it does not matter who wins elections in the big picture. So maybe it slows things down a little bit, but maybe. I'm not even convinced of that. You got to fight over the ideas. You got to argue over the ideas, and you got to advocate for an alternative, a solution.
Right.
And it's exactly that. It's one little bit of sewer in your drinking water, right? You got to be able to clean the water. You got to get all the sewer out. You got to drain the swamp completely. And the only way to drain the swamp completely is with an understanding of the proper role of government. And that means a president who doesn't try to micromanage the NFL or business or anything else. It means a president who respects the media and who doesn't agree with them, fine, but it doesn't berate the media and tell them how to run their businesses. It means a president who can advocate for capitalism and for freedom and for honesty. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, God, I had a whole show about honesty, right? And we're talking about I'm not saying, I think all presidents lie. All presidents have lied, and they lie a lot. All of them do. But as far as I know, no president has ever been so blatant about it. And no president has not cared when he's found out that he lied. He has no problem switching what he says like that on a dime in an instant and going on with life as if nothing happened. That nonchalant attitude to lying is, again, exactly what authoritarians do, but it's exactly, and the fact that nobody cares is exactly what he's learned from Putin, because I'm sure Putin does it. I'm sure a lot of these guys do it. And that is what is most troubling. And it means, again, I'm a pure pragmatist. If lying works, cool. If telling the truth works, cool. If I have to lie now and tell the truth later, cool. Whatever works, I will do. And I will do, in the moment, and it's instantaneous, and I will feel no problem. And you get a sense that he doesn't have any, oh yeah, I lied, I should be worried about it. He really, really doesn't care, right?
No. And there was a story that I covered in my show on this Wednesday, and I did this whole thing of, it was a different title, but the same sort of theme. He has this rule, Peterson has this rule, tell the truth, or at least don't lie. And, it's the, or at least don't lie part. Shulkin, the VA chief, right? Trump says your job is safe as long as nothing else comes out, without even deciding whether or not the allegations that Shulkin misused the funds for travel or whatever, don't even decide whether it's true or not. And it was something like, he can stomach this. Let me see if I could find the way that they just talk about this, where they're just blasé about whether there's any bit of corruption. Yeah, he decided to, quote, stomach the story.
But this is exactly what objectivism differentiates itself from everything else.
Yeah.
You know, objectivism is an integrated system. Once you violate one of those principles, you're violating every one of them. You're going to corrupt your system. It views the human mind and human consciousness and human soul, if you will, as a fully integrated thing. It could be corrupt, but it's fully integrated. So if you corrupt a little piece of it, that corruption will spread. And the economy is like that, and our minds are like that, and our culture is like that. And this is why you have to, as objectivists, you have to fight corruption at every level. You have to fight it in the culture. You have to fight it in politics. You have to fight it, most importantly, in your own mind, and in your own soul, because it's very easy to get corrupted, particularly in the world in which we live in today. So you have to constantly fight it, and you can't lie a little bit. You can't not have integrity or have integrity just sometimes. You can't. And fundamentally, the fundamental here is you can't not think. You can't evade sometimes. You have to think all the time about everything that you have to do. Reason is not just for the important stuff. Reason is for everything. And you get a sense from all these people that they just don't think. Does this athlete think when she put on the shirt, oh, I'm really doping? I mean, did she think? Did she consider what she was doing? Did she project long-term? Does Trump actually think before he tweets? No. Did Paul Manafort think when he set out on this career, this is how I want to make a flourishing life for myself, and here are the steps? No, they kind of emote, they kind of cut corners, they kind of compromise here and there, and it corrupts their entire being and their entire system. And look, we could do the same thing on Hillary Clinton. We could do the same thing on Obama. The point is not, I mean, I think Trump is particularly bad on these things, but it's everybody in the world we live in today who does not take morality and reason and rationality and thinking seriously is got serious
ideology. It's all ideology that we can just dismiss.
Yes.
And
or ethics. And of course, everybody wants to dismiss ethics because ethics tells them to sacrifice, and nobody actually wants to sacrifice. So they dismiss it. But it's ingrained in them, so they can't do the rational, they can only do the corrupt.
Yeah. Now, one thing I wanted to say about this issue of there's the corruption within yourself. Some people might misconstrue and say, oh, so if I made some mistake in my life, what it would mean to say, okay, I'm not allowing any bit of corruption in your life, is that you can honestly say to yourself at any point in time that with respect to all the different virtues, you are doing the best that you can, that you're not evading some significant truth about your living according to the correct principles. Now, the advantage that objectivists have is that the principles that we try to live by at least don't require that we sacrifice ourselves to others. That's not to say that they're easy to live by, but at least the principles that we are, doing our best to live by do not require that we sacrifice ourselves to others. And that makes it doable. People have this idea of a perfection standard. Am I corrupt because I've made some mistake or whatever? But at any point in time, you are keeping your eyes open, doing the very best that you can to do this. And certainly our political system is making some of that impossible to figure out for sure. So people will accept an unearned guilt in a certain way, right? Because they are not clear as to what society or the system is making them do versus the choices that they have to make. The whole mixed economy, I think, has made it a lot harder to judge yourself in relation to the world and to go out and pursue your happiness in that honest way.
Yeah, I mean, being surrounded by pragmatists and living in a world, in a sense, organized around pragmatism, both politically, economically, and in every other respect, is harmful to the individual. It's not good. It's not good to worry about whether the person you're interacting with is a liar or not. It's not good to be governed by politicians like Obama and Trump, who don't give an iota about rights or about capitalism, about freedom, but who want to, in one way or another, control my life and control how I live my life. No, I mean, we live in a very non-objective world. We live in a world ideologically being corrupted constantly, and I think culturally in decline. And I don't see how you reverse that until people start accepting reason, and they start accepting freedom, and they start accepting capitalism as the true, as real values. And right now they don't. Right now they don't care.
Yeah, and reason in particular too, because it's the respect for this faculty and what it does for us, and the need to leave it free, and also the need to make sure that you don't have the garbage in, which is what you talked about in your honesty show. That we need to keep our eyes open and be honest about the facts in the world, because otherwise this faculty that is so important cannot run. And reason is just something obviously that Trump doesn't
well, then nobody does. I mean,
respect.
There is no respect for reason in the entire political world. I mean, and there's no respect for the truth, and there's no respect for reason. I mean, my view is that a president should never lie. And my view about secrecy, government secrecy, is that it should be extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
Something is a secret. That, people's lives, names of spies, obviously all over the world, is a secret. The exact location of our military bases should be a secret. But why our bases are there is not a secret. The American people are funding that. The kids are going there. They should know exactly for every single location of American troops in the world. The president should be able to articulate the exact reason that they're there, and not lie and not deceive, but tell us exactly why they're there. And if that's can't be articulated, then they shouldn't be there. They should
actually sending troops over there. And this is why what Mathis did is so bad. We're perplexed.
No, but they lie all the time. Everything about foreign policy is lying. They lie constantly. And then the second part of it is that everything's a secret. Everything is a secret. So, they're still holding secrets about JFK's assassination 40, 50 years ago. 50 plus years ago, because he was assassinated. Yeah, he's about my age, right? So 50 plus years ago, in spite of the fact that almost nobody's alive who would be relevant. What are they trying to hide? Methods? I'm sure the methods the CIA uses today are far different than what they used back then. So the whole thing is garbage, and none of that should have been a secret 5 years after, unless there was a particular operative whose name would be in danger. And even then, you got to get him out of there. You got to do something so that the American people know exactly what is going on in the world. Lying to the American people, deceiving them, keeping secrets from them is not what government is there for. Government it should be an open book. Everything, every last dime that is spent by the government should be revealed, and every last activity should be explained. But of course, government is so massive today. They spend so much money on so many things, and they do so many things, that you couldn't get a reckoning anyway, because nobody knows. It's so massive. That's another thing that encourages corruption. When you're handling trillions, what's a million? A million is not 1,000th, it's 100th. No, it's 1 millionth, right? It's 1,000 thousandths. It's a millionth, right?
You're faster than I am at this hour. Sorry.
Nothing. It's like I don't keep track of my pennies. Right? A million is like pennies for these guys, right? So a million slipped. There were like all these stories during the war in Afghanistan during the Bush administration of 10 million disappearing here and 100 million disappearing there. Yes. And it was like nobody made a big deal out of it, because a million or 10 million out of trillions, who cares? So
throw me 500,000, come on.
but yeah, the government, the quantity of money is just hard to imagine. And yes, they treat millions of dollars like you treat your pennies. And I don't pay attention to my pennies, right? They could be in the sofa. They could be all over the place. I might, leave them at Starbucks as an extra tip or whatever, because I don't want to have, generally I don't like change in my pocket. So all my small change goes into tipping, right? It disappears, or I just put it somewhere. I just leave it, because I don't want it. It's too much of a hassle. So, I mean, imagine if people did that with tens of millions of dollars, because or they just slipped it into their own sofa, into their own pocket.
Sure. Which is probably what happened with a lot of this.
Nobody's going to find it. No, in Afghanistan, I think it went to the bad guys. I think the bad guys stole it. And I think it's funded ISIS and it's funded Al-Qaeda. We know that the money left in Iraq funded ISIS. I mean, Bush funded ISIS. There's no the Bush money. Petraeus, Mathis, these generals were the guys responsible for leaving suitcases of cash in the hands of Sunni tribal leaders.
Right.
They funded ISIS. This is why I hate Bush and Mathis and Petraeus and all these generals, all these people who believe you win wars by giving the enemy suitcases of cash. They should rot in hell. And if there was a hell, they will. And at the same time, 5,000 young Americans die. I mean, that combination just boils my blood. But nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. I mean, Trump is doing exactly the same thing. But people who love him, people who hate him. Nobody cares about the details. Nobody cares about lives. Nobody cares about the destruction, the devastation, all of this. It's as if, yeah, that's life.
How about we go to something almost completely different?
Well,
there's the Monty Python, and now for something completely different.
Yeah, can I comment on the tweet about Ivanka Trump?
Of course.
What was the tweet you had it here?
Oh, yeah. So it was that we are sending Ivanka, to the closing ceremony.
Yes. Just arrived in South Korea. Yes. We, the royal we, cannot have a better or smarter person representing our country. Can I go throw up a minute?
Well, first of all, the one thing that I noted in that tweet, I'll let you throw up in a second, is that, Pence was there.
Yeah.
So he had to carefully word it in a diplomatic way. He can't think of anybody better. So, but she and Pence, I guess, are on equal footing. Okay, but you go ahead and throw up now.
Maybe. I mean, this is Ivanka Trump, who has foreign policy qualifications to do zilch. She knows nothing. Nobody knows how smart she is. She doesn't strike me as particular. Ivanka Trump is the smartest, best person to represent our country. The daughter of the president. Talk about what do you call those authoritarian regimes where the family is? What do you call it?
Nepotism. Nepotism.
Nepotism. Non-objective. Why is she going to South Korea? So if I were president, just for fun, if I were president, I would withdraw from the Olympics, given that the North Koreans are there, that I would withdraw any official representation. If the athletes want to go, they should go. I don't want to hurt their.
But we just got a gold medal, and he was able to tweet in that sort of authoritarian way about it.
We got a gold medal. We got a gold. Yes, I was on the skis when the gold medal happened. I wouldn't send Ivanka. I wouldn't send. You know who's going to be at the ceremony? I think you had the story. This guy who's got the blood of South Koreans all over his hands. This general is going to be at the ceremony. The sister of the brutal dictator of North Korea sat next to Pence. He should have got up, walked out, and flown back home. I mean, the idea of sanctioning these evil people, this is foreign policy. Let's say she was the smartest person. Then she would get on a plane and go back home. But this smacks of so much about what I hate about Trump. Everything he does is the best, which is a complete and utter lie. Mm-hmm. His daughter is the smartest. She knows nothing about Korea. I bet you if we did a quiz about the Korean conflict, she would know very little. And she knows diplomacy. I guess the reason he's sending her, this is the real reason he's sending her, is she's prettier than the sister of the Korean dictator. And she smiles more than Mike Pence does. So they needed a female who could smile and compete with this. Now I can throw up officially. I mean, it's just this.
Yeah.
I mean, every president, all our presidents are bad, but at least they didn't tweet. I'm sure they had the same kind of thoughts.
No, and they, this idea of the condoning of evil and the sanction of evil and the smoothing it over. So you've got Mathis and you've got Ivanka.
Right. Every regime. I mean, obviously, Obama was brilliant at it. And
Reagan didn't do it as much, yes?
Reagan didn't do it as much. Reagan gets credit, at least with the Soviet Union, he was very good. He was lousy in the Middle East. He was terrible in the Middle East. Hostages for arms and all kinds of stuff with Iran and then the Hezbollah. Anyway, Lebanon, and he was terrible saving Yasser Arafat. He was terrible in the Middle East. But other than the Middle East, He was good on the communists. He called them an evil empire. But even he wouldn't go all the way. Like, I mean, the first thing I would do as president is withdraw from the United Nations, right? Get not send Haley, who's actually.
But isn't Trump making some sort of motions towards that at least? No.
And Nikki Haley's actually doing a good job, but in terms of speaking up, but it's so minor, and you're doing it in the very institution that is evil. I mean, you got to get out. You can't. It's exactly the point, right? A little bit of sewage. It's not like you should support the UN less. We'll get out of the Human Rights Commission, but we'll stay in everything else. No, the institution is rotten. Its essence is rotten. Its purpose is rotten. Its membership is rotten. You don't stay in an organization like that. It's this whole idea of sanctioning evil. You do not sanction evil. You don't sanction the North Koreans. You don't sanction the Cubans, with Obama in Cuba. I mean, that was disgusting. You don't sanction the Iranians. You don't sanction Putin. You call him a thug. You call it, and they should make, in my view, they should make a bigger deal out of this, his involvement in trying to influence the election. And Trump should be leading the charge. If Trump had any integrity, he would lead the charge against Putin because he's responsible for foreign policy, not the Senate, not the House, not Mueller. Trump is in charge of American foreign policy. And somebody is tampering with America. Somebody is sending troops to kill American troops, and silence.
So let me draw a parallel, because in the past, if sometimes we've talked about jihad, you say, well, yeah, okay, the jihadists are bad, and obviously they are. They're terrible people. They want to kill us. But the real problem is our altruism and, the underlying Christian ethics, and that we're not doing the right thing against them. Couldn't you say that, yeah, the Russians are a problem, but the real issue is that our United States, given that we are divided in all this pressure group warfare and stuff, for all the reasons that we've talked about here, that it's that divisiveness among American people, the inability to have a civilized conversation without,
No, it's the altruism. It goes back. It's the altruism and self-confidence that comes with egoism. It's the identity of America that's not there. I mean, I said this many times.
But you see where I'm going, right? Because where I'm going is, how much do you really want to get so excited about the trolling when it's the receptiveness to the trolling that might be the issue more?
No, but it's the intent, right? I agree. It's ultimately the receptiveness to the trolling. But it's the intent. That's a foreign policy issue, is all my point, right?
Okay.
And the president should be doing that. Now, the fact that people are receptive to the trolling, the fact that people are receptive to conspiracy theories, the fact that people are receptive to all kinds of weird things, the fact that people are receptive to pseudo-economics about trade, or pseudo evidence about illegal immigrants, and pseudo evidence about the carnage in the streets of America. The fact that people are open to, what Trump calls fake news, and he is a perpetrator of. Yes. The fact that people are open to that is awful. That's a real epistemological problem. The foreign policy issue is an altruism problem. So I've always said the enemy. I mean, be patient with me for a second here. Not you, Amy, because you know what I'm going to say, but these other people. The enemy is not Islam. The enemy is not even the Islamic totalitarians. The enemy is not Iran. The enemy is not North Korea. We are the enemy. We hold ourselves back. If we wanted to deal with the Muslims like that, it would be over. I don't believe that they have any power over us if we had a foreign policy, a self-interested foreign policy. Does Putin scare me? No, Putin's nobody and nothing. Russia is poor. Russia's not a threat to the United States. It's America that scares me, is that we can't stand up to it. If we stood up once, it would go away. If we stood up to the Muslims, to the Islamic world, the problem with Putin would go away, because if we stood up to the Islamic world, the problem in North Korea would go away. All of these problems exist because they perceive American weakness, and they perceive an America that won't stand up for itself. They perceive an America that is not self-interested, that has no real clear foreign policy in the world. Now, the problems within the U.S., the fact that people are so receptive to conspiracy, to all these fake news, is I did a show on conspiracy theories, and it's exactly that. Again, the more mystical a culture is, the more it's focused on emotions. This relates to the show I did with Brad Thompson, right? So we talked about progressive education. And the goal of progressive education is to annihilate the mind and to elevate emotions as tools of cognition, all for the purpose of collectivizing us, all for the purpose of ruling us, right? At the end of the day. So think about that. We, for decades now, put down reason, elevated emotion. Well, emotions are not tools of cognition. So if people are about emotion, then yeah, they're going to listen to the news they like.
Right.
They're gonna hate what they don't like because based on emotion, not based on cognition, not based on facts, not based on evidence, not based on reason, but just on emotion. So if they see a fake news article, they're not evaluating based on facts. They haven't been taught to do that. They don't know how to use their minds to do that. They're evaluating it based on how does this appeal emotionally? Is this supportive of my emotion or not? It's like, and I don't want to pick on somebody on Facebook, but somebody wrote on Facebook, I actually like the fact that the president stands up to the media and lets them have it. Yeah, emotionally, that's very pleasing. But if you understand the importance of separation of powers, if you understand the importance of free speech, if you understand the fact that government has no role in the business of ideas, if you understand that the government should not be tampering with the way the media does its job, then in spite of that emotion, I feel good as well when the president goes after the media, when the New York Times, which I can't stand. But you got to overcome those emotions and say, but it's wrong. It's bad and long term, even though right now I might feel good, like when I take the cocaine, I might feel good as a consequence. Long term, this is incredibly damaging to the system of government that is the American system of government. It's damaging to my individual rights. And we got to get away from emotions. We got to get away from an emotionalistic culture. And that's why fake news exists out there. It's the same reasons conspiracy theories exist out there. And remember, just have to remind people that it was Donald Trump who pushed the conspiracy theory about
Obama
getting it right for years, and he was forced kind of at the end to kind of withdraw from it. So this is all about emotions, and what Trump is very good at is manipulating emotions because he is an emotionalist, and therefore he knows what it means to manipulate emotions because he that's his mechanism for decision making. So he knows it in other people as well. He sees it in other people as well. So again, it goes back to what we're missing is the ability of Americans to think, to conceptually use their mind, to be conceptual beings. And the more we elevate emotion, the more destructive the world is going to be. All right, I did my rant.
You did your rant. One of the things that I talked about, I had my first patron Q&A yesterday. I'm starting to learn all the things that you do, try to figure out how to do this. And one of the things that came up, somebody asked me just off on the chat, what is your primary goal? And one of the things that I want to do both with you and in my own show is try to model just thoughtful engagement with the events of the world to the extent I can. I'm not saying I'm flawless and I'm never going to make mistakes. Right. By the way, one of the titles I was thinking we could have in our show, it would sound really cool, but it's too intimidating, is Airtight. Right. Because, it's suffocating. And then of course you think airtight argument and you go, oh God, I don't want to be on the spot for giving airtight arguments all the time. Right?
I think we need a model how to look at these things and how to get to principles and how to find what is the principle that's animating this. And when you look at all these foreign policy issues, the principle of self-interest, what does a self-interested foreign policy look like and how are we defaulting in that? Oh, all this corruption boils down to the pragmatism and the mixed economy. And nobody else is going to say that. There are no commentators in the world out there, none, right? Unless you're an objectivist who can see that a mixed economy has to lead to corruption. That was Ayn Rand's observation. That a mixed soul has to lead to corruption. Yes. That altruism has to lead to corruption. And how these things are connected. If we can use this show to kind of, and all our shows to kind of show the world how, how important ethics is and how important reason is. And when you compromise on any one of these things, it leads to disaster. And that's what we're seeing in the world right now. I think that's what we want to be modeling. It's to look for the fundamentals.
Now you're getting ready to go off to Europe or is it only in the UK that you're going, or other places as
I'll
well?
just be in the UK. I'm going to Denver. That's almost as far on, right? But on the way back from the UK to Puerto Rico, I'm doing an event in Denver. So I fly from London to Denver direct in a couple of weeks. But I'll be in London. I'll be speaking at 12 high schools. On Monday, this coming Monday, I'm doing 3 in one day. All three. The one is in the heart of London, Westminster, probably maybe the best academic school in England, and then 2 out in Oxford, St. Edward's and Radley College, and then and so I'm doing 12. Then I'm speaking at LSE at the London School of Economics for the Hayek Society, I think it's called there, and then I'm speaking for the King's College Libertarian Society. I'm speaking for them. We're doing an event with Sargon Avakad.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope to live stream that. I apologize, but I can't record all the high school things because the high schools don't allow it. And there's privacy issues with students as well.
Sure.
So I can't do those, but I'll try to live stream the Sargon one, and I'll try to live stream the LSC one. We'll see if I can do that. And then I'll be doing shows while I'm traveling. I'll try. We won't be able to do a show next Saturday, or I fear the Saturday after that. Maybe the Sunday after that we can do. Maybe 2 weeks Sunday. We'll try to do a show then.
Okay.
What else? And then, what's that? Dr. Booker, I've reached out to you regarding an event in London for European Students for Liberty. We'd love to have you there if you were free. I did not get anything from you guys. So write me at ybrook@aynrand.org, ybrook@aynrand.org, because I did not get anything from you guys with regard to this trip. And what else? And Skylar's asking when I'm be speaking at Hogwarts. A lot of these schools I go to look like Hogwarts, right? They look exactly like they out of Harry Potter. They have the old buildings with the arches, and it looks like somebody's gonna fly with a broomstick on the, above us and everything.
I'm just excited you're maybe going to have a good influence on the next generation of Britons, because as far as I understand, the motivation behind Brexit was all wrong. And we're seeing that, it's just more of the same and maybe some of the worse with it, that it's the same collectivism, like we'll save Social Security better. In effect, they are.
It's very mixed. Some people voted for Brexit for the right reason. Maybe a lot of people, I don't know, but a lot of it voted for the wrong reason. So it's a very, very mixed. So, but I'm excited. And one of the things that's going to happen this summer is that Ayn Rand is going to be taught at all high schools in England in the politics class, in the A1 politics class, under conservative thinkers. So she'll be taught with Nozick and with I forget who, Locke, and it's a good, decent company. She's not exactly
Locke's conservative now. That's just too funny.
I know. I can't remember who was in the conservative list. I got an email today about this, but so that's exciting that Ayn Rand's going to be taught there. And I'm talking to all the top high schools in England. I mean, last time I did 7, this time 13. They're all different ones. It's all the top schools. I'm doing a lot of girls' schools this time. And I'm trying to build up my audience among women because I'm pathetic. Maybe this show will attract more women. We'll see. But YouTube is 90. Everything I do is 90-10 pretty much, or at best 70-30. Male, female. I don't know about yours if you've looked at your demographic.
Mine is pretty similar. I mean, more, I think 70-30-ish sometimes. Yeah.
We're gonna have to find a way to break into the female mind. Maybe we can do a show about that. But before I forget, everybody out there, go to Patreon, and you can find Amy there, and you can find me there, and please support the show and make it possible for us to expand and do more and take equipment to Europe and live stream shows and do all that. I spent $1,000 on some equipment to make it possible to do that. I can only do that if you guys are supporting what we're doing on Patreon. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Really, really important. I need to get up to 6,000 in the next few days. Really could use your help. All of those are on YouTube right now. If you're not subscribing to the channel, please do.
Subscribe to mine too.
Do you have a channel on YouTube?
Oh, yes.
Yes. So Amy has a channel on YouTube. Subscribe to Amy's channel. Like our Facebook pages, like our Twitter, whatever. Amy tweets a lot more than I do, and she tweets to Donald Trump. and often the tweets are really, really good. The ones that Donald Trump, I hope he reads them. I don't think he does, but I hope he reads them.
I have 280 characters now. Woohoo.
Yes. So in other words, follow us, support us, and so we can do more, and we can get these ideas to a larger and larger and larger audience. So
by the way, I have a bunch of program notes that we did not get to over at my blog at don'tletitgo.com. There's one topic that is going to stay around that we can defer to another time. I was going to ask you follow up on what is the sad, lonely music that you were talking about last time. We'll have to talk about music at some point. We'll have a real debate then.
Janice Ian.
Janice Ian is the sad, lonely music?
Yeah.
Okay.
You never heard of Janice Ian?
I'm sorry, I haven't.
Go look Janice Ian up, particularly at 17. Look up at 17. It's terrible.
Maybe I know it, but I'll have to. I just need to have my mind.
Huge in the 70s. She was at the top of the charts in the 70s. But all the songs have a really sad, pathetic teenager type vibe to them, and it's pretty sad. Anyway, I shouldn't have said that. I'm going to regret this. So that was that. Janice Ian.
So see, I'm so tricky. I get you to say things that you wouldn't have said otherwise. Is that it?
I would have never admitted to liking Janice Ian, but that was my teen years. And Pink Floyd.
Wow. Yeah. Pink Floyd. That's kind of dark.
I still do. It's very dark. The Wall. I mean, it's great.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's excellent, but it's so dark.
Yeah, but it's true. Knock down those public schools. It's all about, it's Bradley Thompson's thing. It's like, take the bricks off the wall. That's progressive education. That's the public, the government school system.
We need to abolish government schools.
Put children to a meat grinder and turn them into meat. That's what the government schools do. Anyway, we should wrap up.
We should.
I have one good news, partially good news story that just came across while I was preparing the show. Just this is pretty amazing and sad at the same time. Mm-hmm. So Japan just announced that it is going to permit a new drug to be sold on the market in Japan that will cure the flu in 1 day. This is
okay.
Yes, this is real. Japan has approved a drug that its maker says can kill the flu virus in 24 hours.
Wow.
Advancing what health experts believe could be a breakthrough in the way the illness is treated. And this is from the Wall Street Journal, so not some conspiracy weirdo.
And we wouldn't have to have vaccinations. That whole debate could be gone.
Right. Fast track approval was achieved in Japan. So it's going to go on the market really soon in Japan.
Wow.
It will take 2 years before we get it in the United States.
Well, and how much do you want to think that all this cronyism garbage, there's going to be pressure against it because all the vaccination companies see that they're going to go out of business?
What's happening? So it's great that you brought this. Roche, which produces Tamiflu. The only thing you can take now if you get the flu is you take Tamiflu. It doesn't work that great. Roche has bought the distribution rights for this new thing for the entire world other than in Japan where they compete. So Roche is already taking over that business, replacing the Tamiflu, which was theirs, with this new drug. But it won't come to the United States because of the FDA. So we're gonna have another 2 years of miserable flu instead of using this Japanese drug that supposedly.
This will be a good test, and I hope Trump supporters will keep their eyes open and see, is he pro-life or not? Is he going to, fast track this through the FDA?
Because it's not the only things that are fast tracks are life, are things that have to do with life or death, and flu is not considered a life or death issue. But I might go to Japan and try to bring in some.
I want some.
All you have to do is take one pill. Wow. It's not like Tamiflu where it's a 5-day treatment, one pill. Now, I hope this is true, right? That I'm not purveying a fake news, but it was in the Wall Street Journal today. And it's amazing news, and it's incredibly exciting. And I hope it's true. And I hope that
there's been tons of headlines this flu season about all these people who've died from this, this particular round. And I actually exchanged tweets with Amish Adalja, the infectious disease specialist. And he was saying that it's two different things. The vaccine wasn't targeted as well as it sometimes is. And the particular strains this year were really bad.
This
So-
deals with it in a completely different way. It takes over the human cellular machinery. I don't know. I shouldn't read this, but it's a different approach to treating the flu, which is incredibly effective. At least has been in Japan. So it's pretty amazing. All right,
Thank you.
go to the airport.
Good luck. And I'm hoping that this was not a power outage and that everything's going to go smooth for you travel wise. At least you could have smooth travels.
Outage. And I will be doing a show tomorrow from London. I think I'll be jet lagged, so the show might be a little, hazy, a little slower, a little, like this. But I do plan to do the show from my hotel room in London, assuming they have a good enough internet connection.
Sounds good. Thank
Good.
you.
All right. Thanks, Amy. Sorry for getting you up so early.
I survived. Coffee,
Great weekend.
drugs.
Yeah, caffeine.
That's right.
Good. Bye.
Bye.
Episode.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.